I'd like to call to order the City of Belton City Planning Commission for June 18th. Could we have the roll call, please?
Chairman McPherson,
Here.
Mayor Larkey,
Here.
Councilmember Pryan,
Here.
Commissioner Crate,
Here.
Commissioner McDonough,
Here.
Commissioner Monahan Bass, Commissioner Walton,
Here.
Commissioner Wilson.
Here. All right. First item we have on our agenda for this evening would be the approval of our minutes from our May 7 Planning Commission meeting. Those have been distributed to all of us. Are there any corrections, additions, modifications that we need to make? And if not, is there a motion to accept as they've been presented?
I'll make a motion. We approve the minutes from May 7th of 2024.
Second.
All right, thank you. Motion and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And next will be a comprehensive plan update. This is the draft for future land use map and housing chapter that are available for public comment on the Belton Comprehensive Plan website. Additional chapters will be uploaded to the website as they are completed. An outline of the draft comprehensive plan and goals for each chapter are attached to the agenda packet. Director, are you?
Yeah, I just wanted to give a quick update of where we're at on the comprehensive plan. As Chair McPherson mentioned, we currently have the future land use map and the housing chapter draft on the website. We talked with Confluence, our consulting team, this afternoon, and they are finishing up the remaining chapters, and the goal is to try to have those up no later than early next week. We may even get a few of them up by the end of the week. So take a look at that. The goal is to have them all up before we have our upcoming community engagement open houses, which will be next week. So those will be Thursday, June 27th, from 1 to 7 p.m. over at Meet Me on Main, which is right behind the chamber at 515 Main Street. They have broken those out into 3 different open houses, depending on your area of interest, but anyone can attend any or all of them. The first one is the North Scott Corridor Open House, which is 1 to 3. We have an Old Town Open House from 3 to 5, and then just a city-wide open house 5 to 7. But again, you're welcome to attend any or all of those that you wish. It's just that there may be more specific details about North Scott and Old Town in those meetings. But even if you have areas of interest in those, you can still come to the city-wide open house and get that information. In the packet, I did want to share what was shared with the kind of a summary from the steering committee, which they met last week for their final time. The review outline, of course, has some of the items that we've already talked about with the chapter titles. And then in here were the specific goals for each of those chapters. I don't want to go through all of those with you because I don't think this needs to be a really long meeting, but if you haven't taken a look at that, I encourage you to do so. And if you do have any comments, please feel free to share those with Jenna and I. But each one of these does have a specific goal and strategy associated with it. Most of the most of the chapters have 5 or 6 goals, with then another 1 to 3 strategies associated with each goal. So these are all the things that we will be striving for over the next 15 to 20 years for the duration of the comprehensive plan. It's also something that we will monitor internally and report back to both Planning Commission and Council of where we are at, usually on an annual basis, of how we're meeting these goals or strategies. And of course, these also help influence the Unified Development Code update, as well as how we review projects going forward. And typically, in most staff reports, we will allude back to the comprehensive plan and how a specific request or proposal is meeting the goals and strategies of the comprehensive plan. Any questions on any of the chapters, or if there was any goals or strategies that stood out to anybody, or any concerns about anything?
And Director, if I understood correctly, they will be meeting with the Planning Commission in August with the final presentation, is that correct?
Yeah,
And
so
then
there's
with the council and planning commission in a joint session in July.
Yes, so we do have a work session scheduled with City Council on Tuesday, July 9th, and I will send that out to the Planning Commission as well in an email. But that meeting's at 6 o'clock. It will be at the end of the council agenda, and the Planning Commission is encouraged to attend that. It will be a presentation by the Confluence team of a draft of the comprehensive plan. So it's intended to be shared with both Planning Commission and Council. So please attend that meeting if you are able to do so. And then we plan on bringing the full comprehensive plan final version to you on August 6th for final consideration. That will be at a public hearing. So we will have a public hearing for the comprehensive plan that evening prior, and then ask for your support of that.
All right.
Okay. Well, if you do have any questions or comments on anything, again, reach out to Jenna and I, and we hope that you all are able to attend at least one of the open house sessions. We will be there for all 6 hours, collecting the community feedback and visiting with everybody about the plan. We want to make sure that this has full support from residents, businesses, planning commission, and council.
Has been a lot of work that has gone in behind the scenes with staff and with our advisor that we have had come in, and from what I have seen, have been very impressed with the future plans, and they have been very careful to listen to our concerns as a city, and so very, very pleased with what I've seen of the comprehensive plan so far.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Next item is the Housing Supply Accelerator Playbook presentation.
Yeah, so there was recently a document that was put together, and it's hyperlinked on both the agenda and it's hyperlinked in this presentation, which I'll also send this out to the Planning Commission. But the Housing Supply Accelerator Playbook was sort of a round table that was put together between the National League of Cities and the American Planning Association, and they partnered with several core groups, national groups, to help prepare this playbook, which I believe is about 92 pages. So they worked with the Mortgage Bankers Association, the National Association of Home Builders, and the National Association of Realtors. And the purpose of this is there is a shortage of nearly 4 million housing units in the United States. And that is a challenge we're seeing nationwide, but also in Belton with housing prices rising because there's not enough housing supply. So there's too many people fighting for too few units, and it's creating a lot of challenges. So the goal, the playbook is meant to serve as a starting point for engagement and alignment through public-private partnerships to produce attainable and locally driven plans of action that account for differences in local capacities and local market conditions. So this playbook has some overarching strategies, but they can be implemented in different ways at the local level. And so my reason for bringing this forward is to share with the Planning Commission what we're doing internally to of our progress on trying to help drive new housing development and accommodate housing development in the community, because we know it is a need, and it's the City Council's #1 priority on their prioritization list is particularly single-family housing, how we can encourage and accommodate that. So that's the purpose of this presentation, is the things that we're already doing that we hope to see progress on in the near future. So these are just some different examples nationally of what is being done. Now, some of these don't necessarily pertain to Belton. For example, transit-oriented development isn't really something that we are in a position to accommodate right now, but in larger urban areas, that's something that is being sought out. Land banks and community land trust, again, more of an urban area focus. But some things that we can do, we have the permitting the missing middle housing, which is also one of the big goals of the housing chapter of the comprehensive plan. And the missing middle housing is essentially, most cities are really good at permitting single-family homes and large multifamily apartment complexes, but all of the in-between housing types, from duplexes, row houses, townhomes, even smaller size single-family homes, those are all examples of the missing middle housing that is not captured, but is usually more affordable to construct and isn't as significant of a burden on infrastructure. Supporting rehab and repair tools, which is something that we have started, at least with the Old Town 353 program. That has been instrumental in helping with rehabilitation of housing across Old Town. Reducing parking minimums is not something that we have looked at yet, but that is something that could be looked at through the Unified Development Code update. And then allowing accessory dwelling units is something that we did start permitting back in 2021. And we have permitted a number of those, but they've mostly been on larger estate lots, particularly in the northeast part of the city along Kentucky and 155th Streets. But those are allowed in smaller lots as well. It's the question or challenge is how to accommodate those a little bit better. So some things that we have done so far, I already mentioned the accessory dwelling units. We have added housing master plan reviews for plans that are utilized by more than once by the same builder. So that's very common in Autumn Ridge and Traditions, as well as Meadow Creek, where they may have 4 or 5 different floor plans that they use multiple times, so they only have to submit those plans to us the first time that they use it, and then they can continue to use it. So that does expedite the review timeline for additional permits using those plans, and it also cuts back on the cost to the builder in terms of additional printing and additional design and stamping and sealing of those plans. We have made some improvements to our permit review process. We've updated our plot plan checklist, which we had received a lot of feedback on how that could be improved. And then we've also made a commitment to 5 days for first review for residential home permits. Another thing that we did in 2022 was adopting the alternative development standards, which are essentially minor modifications that could be reviewed and approved through platting or the subdivision process. That is helpful in that you don't have to go, if you're just requesting a reduction to 1 setback or the size of maybe 1 or 2 lots in a larger subdivision, you don't have to go all the way back through a PUD process and go through the rezoning. So that allows those minor modifications to help in unique challenges that may be present on a property. Comprehensive plan update is in process, which we think are particularly the housing and neighborhoods chapter has a lot of goals and strategies that align with this playbook. And then the Unified Development Code will start after the comprehensive plan update is adopted, which we anticipate being able to start that sometime this fall. So to put this together, there were representatives of 34 cities, towns, and villages, and then 66 private sector representatives from across the United States. So the municipalities were at all different sizes and scales across various geographic areas. And these were the 4 primary areas that they focused on: was construction and development, finance, land use regulations, and infrastructure. This presentation is really just focused on construction and development and the land use regulations, because those are the 2 that we really have some control over. The finance side is really more private driven, and then infrastructure, the focus there was more on the financial resources to help with infrastructure, which we know that there are some challenges with, and that's something that Public Works could also take a look at. These are the different approaches that they took of how to build the better housing supply. Kind of just a 9-step process of how to do that and how to come up that they put within this playbook. So there were 13 strategies that supported the construction and development, and I highlighted all of those of where we're at in the city. So the yellow are what we're currently in progress, or something that we are currently reviewing or looking at doing in the near future. And then the red outline are things that we have not started yet. So we are in progress on 10 of these 13 strategies. So the stakeholder engagement, we did have a workshop back last August, which was very helpful. I think since then we've made some improvements on our permit review timelines. We've clarified some of our checklists. We've updated the plot plan, which was probably one of the biggest things that we heard concerns about. And so far, the feedback that we have received on that has been positive, and we're continuing to make improvements to that based on feedback that we do receive. We do plan some additional engagement with the building and development community with the new UDC update, as those regulations do have a significant impact on what kind of housing product they can build and the costs associated with that. Permit process, I mentioned already, we did an internal review last year, and we've been in the process of updating all of our applications and guides accordingly. Internal operations, we have improved our interdepartmental communications, particularly planning and engineering. We've made improvements there on working together with our communications. And I think the biggest improvement to communication is going to come through our central square, which would be our online permitting and inspection system. That will really streamline communications, and that is currently in development. We anticipate having that available by the end of October is our goal. And then streamlining development, we have reduced our planning application process timeline by 15 to 30 days. So previously, a final development plan was taking 45 days. We've cut that back to roughly 30. And then full development plans, rezonings, preliminary development plans, and preliminary plats were taking about 90 days. We've reduced that to about 70 to 75 days. Small scale residential, similar to the engagement, we've heard a lot of interest from builders that is the direction that the housing market is moving, is more small scale builders trying to get involved in the housing market, and so that's trying to accommodate those smaller scale developers. Infill development, I think I did not finish that. Okay, well that's a mistake on my part, so we're missing some information there. But infill development, we have, and that's a goal, particularly in the downtown area, is we have some vacant properties, we have some underutilized lots where there could be some additional opportunities where there's infrastructure available for new housing. We also have quite a few vacant lots throughout the northeast part of the city, in Martinwood, Dykewood, and Norman Tract subdivisions where there are opportunities, and we've been receiving permits for some of those lots. So there's a lot of opportunity there in existing neighborhoods where there are vacant lots, or lots that over time maybe had been combined with vacant lots that could be potentially resplit for housing development. So that's something that we are looking at, how to better accommodate that. And I mentioned the expedited processes. Land supply inventory. We are currently maintaining inventory of both city-owned properties and privately owned land that is available for housing development. And kind of building on that is the facilitating development. So over the past over the past year, we have issued 3 different RFPs for properties that are ideal for housing or mixed-use development. and have received proposals on all 3 of those. And then we anticipate that before the year end, we will have an additional RFP issued for housing development. And that would be for the property off of Mill Street, just behind, or just to the east of Yoakum, in between Yoakum and Lacey Lane. Small scale developers, again, we don't really have any distinction between developers, development size or capacity, but we do try to welcome and support small developers that are interested in developing new housing in Belton. And then innovative construction. So those are we currently have our 2018 building codes that are in effect that were adopted in 2022. We do anticipate 2024 codes being released and likely adopted in 2025 or 2026. We're trying to keep on the same schedule as other metro area cities, as we were a bit behind on the 2018 updates due to staff changes. So the next section is on land use regulations, and all 14 of these strategies we are in progress on. The first one would be increased housing supply. I've already mentioned that infill housing is a big opportunity in the city because there's already adequate infrastructure in areas that can accommodate that. And the biggest thing with the comp plan is reviewing infrastructure expansions into new growth areas of where housing is appropriate. Long-range planning, we've already talked about that this evening with the draft of the 2050 comprehensive plan and the goals and metrics that are designed to increase the supply and diversity of housing in the city. Education on housing, we've had the Builders and Developers Workshop. We've also had discussions about housing with both Planning Commission and Council. And we have started holding community meetings for new housing developments to help communicate that to residents of the need for the housing, and it's also creates some additional communication between residents and builders and developers. Having a zoning audit, that is something that we will be doing with the 2025 UDC update. And the goal with that is to look at zoning changes to where we can update our minimum zoning standards to help increase and encourage improvements in our housing supply, which also implement the goals of the comprehensive plan. Zoning district updates, restrictive standards, all of those kind of fall along the zoning code update. Restrictive standards, we do have some current minimum lot sizes, width setbacks, and coverage that is generally more restrictive than other metro cities from what we've seen. And so that is a bit of a challenge for us. That's something that we would be looking at with the zoning code update, is how can we be more comparable to other cities in the metro with that. Land use regulations, the future land use map draft that we have does provide more flexibility in housing types. So instead of just strictly calling out, this is single family, this is duplex, this is multifamily, we have low, medium, and higher density residential. So that does allow a little bit more flexibility in that. But under the zoning, just because it's low density residential doesn't mean that the zoning wouldn't control an area just exclusively for single family. So we are not proposing to eliminate single family zoning entirely like some cities are. We still think that there needs to be that exclusive single family zoning, but maybe there's some parts of the city where there could be more of a mix. And then housing plans. Infill housing is an important component in both the Old Town and the North Scott sub-areas. And then we also believe that the additional housing is needed in those corridors to support the continued revitalization efforts of those corridors. That's one thing in particular we've heard a lot along the North Scott corridor is there isn't a lot of residential along that corridor. So businesses, if it's a local retail or restaurant business, they may struggle a little bit more because they're not able to drive in the neighborhood traffic. So that's something to consider. For non-conforming flexibilities, we've already talked a little bit about the modification changes that we allow under the code. But this in particular is, we have a number of single-family homes, for example, that may be in a commercial zoning district. And how can we preserve that single-family house until there's actually, or allow them to make modifications or even make minor expansions to that, which currently aren't allowed under the code, to allow that to remain housing until a time where it's appropriate to be redeveloped for commercial purposes. Streamlining the housing reviews, we have reduced our review and approval times for new subdivisions and housing permits. Building code updates, again, some of this is kind of just repeating what was also in that construction component. And then housing preservation, this is something that did come up with some of the goals in the neighborhood and housing chapter of the draft. Particularly, we have a good supply of naturally occurring affordable housing, was the term that they used. And we're seeing a lot of that being bought up by investment groups, making modifications to it, and then renting or leasing it for a much higher price than what it originally was for. And that's not just rental property, we're also seeing that with owner-occupied properties as well. So overall, rents and home values have increased significantly over the last couple of years. So that's something of how to particularly help lower income residents, particularly homeowners, stay in their homes and rehabilitate those. That's another item that was suggested. And a lot of times what we're seeing and what the residents that we're hearing from are generally senior citizens who may have bought their home 30, 40 years ago for a very affordable price, and now the value of their home is significantly more, but they don't have anywhere to go. And so they're kind of stuck there, but their property taxes and other expenses have gone up significantly. So those are just some of the items that we do hear from the community. And then the last two, climate hazards was thrown out as a strategy. And we do look at floodplain reviews for any properties that have floodplains on them. And then something that we have heard, we heard it at City Council last week, we've heard it for a few other developments, and we'll likely hear about it with another new development that's coming, is the consideration of tornado shelter options in slab and new slab homes. We are receiving requests for communities that have slab homes from builders. They are less expensive to develop, and they do provide a more affordable housing option for new housing, even though they're still $280,000, $300,000 homes. But it does cut out about $60,000 out of the home price when you don't have to build the basement. But we have had, staff has even had the concerns with those builders of how can you accommodate an interior room that is tornado safe. So that is something that we currently can't mandate because there's nothing in the building code that requires that, but that may be something that we want to explore, especially if we are updating our building code requirements in the next year or two. And then the last strategy is land use coordination and making sure that those standards are updated accordingly to increase our housing supply and streamline our review and approval processes. So that's just kind of an all-encompassing. We have to make sure if we update our land use standards that we're also updating and improving our development review processes, or otherwise then updating those standards is kind of for nothing because we're not really, we've only met one piece of the puzzle to help accelerate housing development. So that's just a high-level overview of the playbook, and the report is online if anybody would like to take a look at it. But I thought it would be good to share that with the Planning Commission so you know where city staff is on trying to encourage additional housing development. We have had a number of new home builders and developers that have reached out to us over the last 6 to 12 months that are interested in Belton. So we continue to be on more developer and builder radars than we were in the past, and we're trying our best to continue to facilitate that development and bring forward product that is needed for the community. So, any questions?
It's encouraging to see the number of areas that we are already in progress on. And just, to me, that speaks to the forward thinking of staff and the city council. And so really appreciate seeing it in this form.
Yeah.
What we're doing.
Well, we will keep you updated on any changes to the things that we're doing internally. Like I said, I think the comprehensive plan is a significant step for us, and then the zoning code update that will follow that. And then the launch of our online platform will also help significantly with our review and communication process about housing. And I think it's important to note that residents will also be able to utilize that portal to find out what's being built next to them. They can even go on there and see where things are in the process.
Sounds great. All right, Director, anything under your report?
Yeah,
In addition to what you've already reported on tonight.
Yeah, a couple of things. So this Thursday, June 20th at 6 o'clock, we do have a meeting in here with North Point and residents within 300 feet who received notice of a residential project that's proposed just east of Building 4 at Southview Commerce Center. That was previously known as Sunset Hills Third Plat. That was platted back in 2021 for 27 single-family homes. North Point has made many efforts to try to engage a residential developer on that. They had one a couple of years ago. That fell through. Infrastructure costs have gone up, and with that, they have found a home builder that is interested in the site, but that did require them to look at some reductions in the lot sizes and setbacks to try to accommodate that and remain within budget. So that project does include an extension of Star Times Drive, so we'll connect to 155th Street. All total 41 lots are proposed, and so that meeting will be between the developer, North Point, and the home builder. Staff will also be in attendance, and anybody from the Planning Commission is also welcome to attend that as well. But that'll be this Thursday at 6 o'clock here in the council chambers.
All right. Any other items? I mentioned before the meeting started, but it was a great story that I saw online today that Channel 41 had done on the additional acreage that has been given to the city that's going to be developed out by Cleveland Lake, and how the Parks Department has taken that. Really exciting to see that that additional work or plans that are being done for that, but also very positive. I felt like
Yeah, a
story on
positive
what was
story. It
doing.
was the top story on KSHB this morning on their website. So it's nice to have positive story for Belton.
Absolutely. So, all right. Anything additional?
Our next meeting date was scheduled for Tuesday, July 2nd. However, we do not have any applications, so we are going to cancel that meeting. So our next meeting will be Tuesday, July 16th. We do anticipate that we will have a public hearing that evening for the Southview residential project that I just mentioned. We do anticipate some neighborhood opposition to that based on some of the comments we've received. So we likely will have some residents in the audience. We'll also have the developer and the builder here as well. And then instead of the July 2nd meeting, just a reminder, we have the July 9th work session, and I'll send out an email reminder about that. And also, if everybody could mark your calendars for Tuesday, August 6th, that will be, we will definitely have a planning commission meeting that night. That's the night we hope to have the comprehensive plan public hearing. And we may have a few other applications that we're anticipating receiving submittals on the next couple of weeks that we will have before you that evening as well.
Very good. All right.
I'll second it.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.